took off a little tiny piece, and I told her, I was like, just don't really inhale too hard. And I lit it up, and she inhales, and then I look at her, and she's having a seizure. She's gone. She does this.
So go ahead and give me your name.
George.
And can you tell me where you're from?
California.
California, born and raised?
Yeah, I was fortunate to have a really good upbringing. It wasn't perfect. My parents actually divorced at when I was at a young age. So I turned 18, and I just was kind of really rebellious at the time. Drinking is definitely, alcohol, getting in the mix, definitely kind of started the downfall for me, definitely.
But if you don't mind speaking on how you got there from the drinking to the marijuana drug.
Yeah, okay, so I I think okay, so it was a bunch of factors that kind of all came into play. I Shortly after my DUI, I couldn't drive, right? I got into this altercation in Las Vegas where a fight broke out, and I was drunk, on the scene. And while the fight was broken out, like I'm waiting for a friend, and I'm just talking trash, and somebody actually punched me and break my jaw, and broke it in two places, and I was passed out. And so, yeah, and so you know, I came home with a broken jaw, right? And the doctors gave me a bunch of pain meds. They gave me liquid Vicodin, Norco. They gave me what's it called? Vicodin, Norco. Yeah, oxycodone.
They give you a little bit of everything, essentially.
Yeah, all this stuff, right? And at the time, I needed it, man. There was
Yeah.
never so much pain I ever had in my life. From there, I kind of developed like an addiction to taking Vicodin. Instead of taking just one, I'd take like two or three. So then that kind of, you know, that was another thing, right? I started smoking a lot of weed back then, just mixing the two and with like the Vicodin. So those three,
That's like a
yeah, it was like those three, even though it wasn't heroin, it was like heroin. Shortly after I break my jaw, I come home, I heal up, I hook up with a girlfriend. She ends up getting pregnant, and came up with this idea that if we move to Arizona together, that we can afford, an apartment, and the lifestyle out there is cheaper.
price of living.
Yeah, it didn't work out. And long story short, she started drinking again. We started drinking again together, and that led to the downfall of our relationship. But one time she took off, and when she took off, she dropped our son off with me, and I was, I think it was like I didn't really have a place to stay, so I was in this like apartment complex with just like a mattress. It was like a really desperate situation. And, I thought the best thing to do was to come back to California where we had family and stuff.
Definitely.
And so finally she comes from Arizona, and she gets him, and she takes him back. And when she left with him, a part of me basically died. My whole ego, call it your ego, everything I thought that I was, what I should be, my direction, I didn't know how to react to that. So I spiraled down really fast. Just before he left, though, I had started a commercial cleaning business, and that gave me a lot of freedom, too much freedom. But I didn't really take advantage of that freedom until after my son left. After my son left, it was a downward spiral. During this time, on Craigslist, there was this casual encounters section. Yeah, no, it was nasty. When I say nasty, it was like a dating site, but it was like there was no rules whatsoever. And I have this addictive personality, and so my escape back then was to, find a party on in the casual encounter section, and what that meant was, sex and drugs, and so that became kind of an obsession and an escape during that time. But when I wasn't, you know, had my head in the business, my I was it was my escape. And then first thing that I started to abuse was, I don't know if I well. I don't know if you want if I should say the drugs, but I guess we're talking about drugs. So like crystal meth was like the drug that kind of got me hooked into this really bad lifestyle. And so I didn't care about anything except for my business and getting a little bit of that drug. So then I did too much of it. Yeah, things were getting worse. I was getting in over my head. I had too many accounts, not enough people to clean them, and I was staying up too many days. I was having some hallucinations. I was seeing things. Um, so then I went to a party, and um, I was already super high. And then they asked me if I wanted to shoot the drug, and so I shot the drug.
And
And
that's
what's that?
meth, correct? Or
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
sorry.
And so, like, that was like one of those moments where I was like, oh shoot, did I die? Did I die? Did I die then? Like, what happened to me? It was really a crazy, scary experience. And for the next few days, I was like, just kind of, um, I don't really remember, but
Not to cut you off, Mike, that's a pretty big jump. I feel like to go from you were essentially smoking it, essentially, correct?
yeah,
And then to shooting it.
yeah, it was a pretty big jump. I was really depressed, and like I said, I was um, kind of lost purpose. It's like I just didn't. I was really kind of like centered into what was happening that was really upsetting me, and I was trying to run away from it, I guess. And I was just around really bad influence. Bad influence. I was, I never carried around a needle with me or nothing. I went to, a bad area, a place where people did that regularly, and it was nothing to them to just help me do it for myself. And so, just to kind of connect my story back to the Tenderloin, like that's where it happened in San Francisco, like where I found that group of people that helped me shoot up, that was always providing drugs, free drugs. You know, that was the Tenderloin. That was Mission Street. That was Eddy Street. That was, um, what's it called? That place is out of this world.
That's essentially what my father started using as well, meth, which led to his demise, essentially.
Yeah,
So
that's totally understandable. Yeah. So, like I said, I had this company, right? But everything just kind of crashed down. I just became overwhelmed. I basically gave up the keys to the business, and I said, I got to focus on myself. I have this addiction and losing my mind. I don't know what's going on. Uh, and I handed the keys over, and I drove, you know, in my van, which I was living in at that point, to San Francisco. I felt like there was answers there, and many nights I would just be sleeping in my car. I would find food out there in the streets, people left behind. I basically had given up all hope on being able to get myself out of that situation. And during that time, my aunt kept asking me, "Hey, do you need help? Do you need help?" And I said, "Yes, come help me." And she came and she picked me up. Her and my uncle came and picked me up from the Tenderloin. I was on the corner of Mission and 6th Street, And I had been there for a few days. Now, I had met this girl who was pregnant and she was addicted to heroin. I hadn't been on heroin at that point. Um, and I just felt like bad. I kind of judged her, like, how could you be doing drugs if you're pregnant, type of thing. And anyways, I gave her my van. I gave her and her boyfriend my van. And that day, my aunt came and picked me up. So my aunt and uncle got me sober off of the crystal. And at this point, I had already been diagnosed with some things. So going back a little bit to when I was in the Tenderloin, I was, like I said, I shot up, going to a lot of parties, doing a lot of bad behavior, not caring, totally spiritually disconnected. But anyways, I got a diagnosis of hepatitis C, right? And so I found that out because I got into a really bad car accident where I almost died. My car was totaled. I had to go to the hospital, and they said, "Hey, you have hepatitis C." I was like, "Okay." Didn't care because I was still off of my psychosis, whatever you call it. So, anyways, when my aunt picked me up from the Tenderloin, she says, "Well, let's go to the hospital and have you checked out." And right before she came and picked me up, I got super high one last time, and so she picks me up. We go, and she takes me to the hospital. I'm high out of my mind, and before the doctor walks in, it's like I told my aunt, I'm like, "I'm pretty sure I have HIV." Oh, no, I said, "I'm pretty sure I have AIDS." But anyways, the doctor walks in, and I was so high. I think I said, "Hey, do I have?" I think I asked him, "Do I have AIDS?" And he's like, "You have HIV, sir." And I was like, I knew it. I just still, out of my mind, I didn't care. I was just like, whatever, okay.
You know how you possibly contracted it? You think this through those parties essentially sharing needles and stuff like that? Or?
Yeah, there was. It was absolutely. So yeah, no, my aunt and uncle, they picked me up and they got me sober for about 3 months, and then I moved out to the woods with my brother for about 2 years, and I wasn't using there. And from there, I started to get back into like serious work. I was a production foreman, and so in between that time, I um, fell back into the drugs and stuff. But I still had Hep C, right? So I just kind of I go into these phases where I get like super depressed and or whatever, and basically I after work in my free time I somehow uh, started to get entangled with people that were doing heroin.
And not to cut you off, but this was as you were the foreman.
So that's as a foreman. I'm working 12 hours a day, right? I go home and I sleep, and I still don't get to see my son. Child support comes out. I don't really even get to talk to him, you know. And so that's just another thing. And I'm dating this girl at the time who's making me feel bad. Um, so something just snapped one day, and this lady was smoking heroin in front of me, and I said, "Well, let me try that." And then she says to me, she says, "Don't do this for more than 3 days because then you're gonna have withdrawals." And I said, "Okay." And like eventually, I started to feel the withdrawals, and it was terrible. So I kept going to the same place, this guy in Modesto. So I go pick it up, smoke it, and that was that. So then I went there one time, and he doesn't have it, and I'm like feeling sick. And but I know fentanyl is available, you know, in that same area, in one of those rooms. And so I go and I find a little bit of air or some fentanyl, and I think the guy even says, don't, be careful with that shit. Strong.
Were you not scared about doing that? I know.
Oh, I was scared. I was scared.
I know a lot of people pass from fentanyl than other drugs per se. Well, I can't say per se, but I know fentanyl is one pretty popular and taking people out lately.
Oh, absolutely. It's the real. It was the real pandemic. Really, like people were just dropping like flies. I did a little bit of it, little, very small, little bit at a time. I just remember um, I felt like my heart was going to stop. Felt like oxygen wasn't getting into my body. Of course, there's this addicting feeling that people, go to, but, I remember like, holy shit, I'm feeling good right now, but I might die. I might die right now, and that's scary. And so I think I didn't get hurt because I already had heroin in my system. So by the time I tried fentanyl, like it was already like my brain like was okay to have a little bit at a time. But it became such a terrible addiction. So now I work 12 hours a day, right? So now I go home, I don't sleep, I go get my drugs, $20 worth. Hopefully that's enough to last me throughout the night, throughout the next day, until when I got to go get it again. And sometimes it didn't. And when it didn't, like I get off of work and my drugs were 30 minutes away, and I could I almost couldn't make it. I made it, but like I'd be dry heaving, throwing up. Like I'd have to wave to my dealer to come into the car from his room, waving to him like, I can't move, please just give me, the drugs. And it was so scary, man. So it was scary because the withdrawal feeling made you felt like you were gonna die, and also like you didn't know how long you were gonna have withdrawals. People were, no one in the hood out there knew how to quit, how long it took to quit. No one knew anybody that quit. That was untouched like territory. So I was beginning to feel really hopeless. I was missing days at work. All the money that I had made, I owed to my dealer. And by the way, if I didn't find it in Modesto, I would go to the Tenderloin, because the Tenderloin, people are out there, just out there
24/7
with wads of cash because they are making so much money. They got heroin, they got mostly fentanyl, and they got crystal, and they're just sitting there, and they're just sitting out there. There's like a whole handful of them. People are just passing by, and these dudes just got backpacks on, wads of cash, and hella drugs. So, anyways, now my addiction is heavy, and I can't go 2 hours without a hit. I'm working in a bakery factory. I can't go on working there because of my addiction. And so while I was out there doing the fentanyl now, I was, I fell back into hanging out with wrong crowds, parties, and stuff like that. And I guess one day I just wake up and I have like this really bad, like open wound in my mouth. And yeah, it turned out that I actually had syphilis at that time. And it may have gone through my gums, because like it just like dissolved. Like all these teeth are fake right here. This destroyed my gums, right? And then I got infection all down here too. Thank God for Kaiser. So anyways, part of my story is, yeah, I have all these different sicknesses that I was able, thank God, to overcome. Um,
And so, how did you contract the syphilis? I'm sorry.
I think it was probably just sexual contact, actually. Yeah, it was sexual contact. I don't doubt that. Yeah, that was a painful experience. So at this point now, I have hepatitis C, HIV, and syphilis, and just kind of not really, I'm just not really caring again. I lost sight. I think it was the fentanyl really that kind of took me away from my spiritual self. Like I was always in this survival mode of, get the drugs, get some food, don't be, you know, don't be late. I don't know. Um, so now at that point, um, I still wanted to heal myself and get better. So it was at this point, I think it was the breaking point where I had borrowed like $100 from a girlfriend, and I went to go buy drugs with that. And the guy that I gave the money to just ran off with it. And so I was left, with
This was
withdrawals.
Tenderloins as well.
This was actually in Modesto.
Oh, sure.
So I lived in Modesto, but I had a girlfriend in Tenderloin. She was like in one of those apartment complexes, and she didn't work. She was poor. She said she claimed to have like a mental illness, and so she got to live there for free. So, anyways, I just remember that day when that guy walked off with my money. I was like, that's gonna be me if I keep doing this drug. I'm gonna be stealing from people because here I am. I have no money. I had nothing to trade. I traded everything at that point: video games, video game systems, sports stuff, um, any tools, anything that I could spend money, instruments, anything I could get money for. I given it up. I had nothing left to give. The money I borrowed was gone. And I was like, I don't want to become like that guy. I don't want to steal. And so, anyways, that was probably the turning point. I called Kaiser and I said, okay, I'm ready to go to that program you're talking about. Oh, I should say this. Before I went to that recovery center, I went to that girlfriend's house in the Tenderloin, and I would just go do fentanyl and hang out with her. And then one day she's like, "Hey, I want to try it," and I said, "Okay." And so I held up, the foil for her. I pulled up the fentanyl, and I took off a little tiny piece, and I told her, I was like, "Just don't really inhale too hard." And I lit it up, and she inhales, and then I look at her, and she's having a seizure. She's gone. She does this. And so I had to pick her up off the toilet and run her to the living room, put her on the couch. I'm trying to wake her up. She's not breathing. I throw water in her face. She's still not breathing. I'm like, fuck, I need to call 911. I call 911 and I'm like, no, I can't do this. And then I call him back. She's still not breathing. I said, she's not breathing. You gotta come here right away. And so the ambulance gets there right away. And they revive her and she's okay. But they gave her some Narcan and she came up right away. But her low oxygen levels was like super low or something like that. And yeah, that was a really scary moment for her and I. It was her first time trying it. She never tried it, and just that, and I put this even so small amount. I was shocked that it affected her that way, even though we knew how strong it was. just before I go to the recovery center, I do a little bit more in the bathroom at the gas station, and I go in there, and that recovery center gave me everything that I needed. They took care of me um, the the way that I needed to be taken care of. You know, I was there for 60 days. The first 30 days, I was going through withdrawals. So for 30 days, for every night, sweating through the sheets, had to change sheets in the morning, through all my clothes, you know, every night shaking because it's cold. Um, you know, the first couple of weeks was really hard, just like, you know, the throwing up, the vomiting. Um, so after, you know, after 30 days, it kind of, my mind got back to equilibrium, you know, and I started having fun again. I started, you know, being more in touch with my spirit. Um, and, uh, and yeah, it was a really good moment. Um, so I left there 3 years ago. I've not touched fentanyl, heroin. I still smoke weed.
Congrats, congrats.
Sorry, I don't know if I should say that.
No, you all
But I
good.
mean, this is, I really believe in the healing powers of marijuana. But, anyways, that is my story for fentanyl. You know, I was there with a lot of people at the recovery center, and a majority of them were there for fentanyl, and just fentanyl actually. Heroin isn't really as popular.
Not since I feel like since fentanyl has been on the
Oh
streets.
yeah, no, like everybody was there for fentanyl. Some alcohol. It was either alcohol or fentanyl. Yeah. But anyways, so since then, I met a girl at that recovery camp, and you know we've been together ever since we left. We hooked up
For the
later.
last 3 years.
Yeah, yeah. We left. We kind of started doing our own thing, but then we ended up meeting back again, and we've been together ever since. You know, and I think we kind of help keep each other sober. And you know, she's more, her thing was alcohol. My thing was fentanyl. And so you know, it's been good. You know, we have she has 2 kids, and so I think part of what keeps me, you know, sober is, you know, having a purpose. You know, I really help a lot with their kids a lot, take them to school and, you know, cook for them. And, you know, I'm kind of like a stepdad in their life, and so, you know, with that comes, you know, purpose, and I'm just trying to be good now for them. And you know, life is still, you know, it's not in no way is it like perfect. You know, I still am working on getting back into my son's life. He's almost 12 years old, and you know, it just requires getting, you know, back on my feet. I did a lot of damage to myself all throughout that time where I was addicted to fentanyl. You know, especially fentanyl. I did everything I could for money. I was getting loans. I was getting, you know, payday loans. Um, I ruined my credit trying to, you know, feed my habit. But I couldn't help it. I was really scared, and I think that's the scary thing is people either they don't know what they're getting into when they do that drug. Is, you know, it's like Russian roulette the first time. It really is. Like you try it, you know, there's a good chance you might just die. You know, you might just get that bullet. And if you don't get that bullet, it's like a real slow death unless you know, get some divine intervention. You know, that's what it took for me is to look back, you know, at nature, to go back into nature and to you know, ask for forgiveness and to give up, you know, the ego, let go of the ego and what the ego wants to do, and make room for, you know, prayer and meditation.